Back in the mid to late 1980s, I served as an assistant coach at McBee High School, which is a small 1A school in South Carolina. McBee has a population of about 800, and it has exactly one stoplight. It draws players from a pretty wide area, though. It's mostly very rural and scattered, so that you have maybe 300 students tops in the high school. At any rate, during my first 4 years there, I was an assistant coach of one of those teams that kept finding ways to lose. We had a pretty good defense most seasons, but the offense tended to struggle. As a result, we had a number of close games, and we lost most of those close games due to one crazy play or the other. In a game against McCall High School, we scored only once, but we held the other team without an offensive touchdown. We had our chance to increase our lead to 2 scores when our running back took a handoff with a huge hole in front of him. Unfortunately, he hit the ball with his knee after taking the handoff. The ball popped straight up several feet in the air. Their defender caught the loose ball on the fly, raced downfield for what proved to be the winning score. We lost another game in which we held the other team to negative yardage, only to have them go 80 plus yards on a turnover to win that game. In another game, we scored late to cut the other team's lead to 1 point. Head coach had installed a 2-point trick play during the week, so it seemed like a perfect time for us to use it. We ran the trick play, but the other team was not fooled at all, and we didn't score. We couldn't understand how they were ready for it. But we put it down to bad luck on our end and good coaching on theirs. That is, until we watched the game film with the sound turned on. As it turned out, one of our running backs had been injured the week before, and he couldn't play. So we put him in charge of filming the game because it was tough to find people in our small fan base who were willing to go sit up on top of a press box and film a football game. So Billy, the kid that we had filming, was a very friendly kid. This guy always had a smile and he loved to talk to people. Never met a stranger. As we watched the game, we could hear what the camera's microphone picked up. Of course, we could hear Billy as he struck up conversations with everyone else on the press box. Included in the people he struck up conversation with were the coaches of the other team who were standing right next to him on top of the press box. As we got to the crucial 2-point attempt, we were anxious to see if we could see on film exactly what happened to give away the trick play. How had they been able to defend it so well? We didn't have to look too far. All we had to do was listen. What we could hear was Billy saying to everyone from the opposing side, filmer, stats person, and their coaches, "Y'all watch this. You're fixing to lose." We could hear their coaches radioing down to the sidelines, "Trick play, trick play." We lost the game at Mount Pleasant one year when the Rattlers scored on 4th down seconds before halftime. On the ensuing kickoff, we had an extremely talented freshman, Macy Stevens, back to return, and there was always a chance that Macy could return a kick for a score. Now, down the road, Macy would go on to become an all-state running back, and he played at South Carolina State and even got a tryout in the NFL. He's quite a player. But in this game, he was just a talented freshman who wasn't really prepared. I should take just a moment to describe Mount Pleasant to you. The school was a very rural school. There's no town there. It was so rural that the football field was literally surrounded on three sides by cotton fields. At any rate, Mount Pleasant kicked the ball deep towards Macy, who was standing down near the goal line. As the ball came down, Macy got confused on the rules between kickoffs and punts, and he gave the fair catch signal and ran off and left the kick like he would do with a punt that was coming down near the end zone. Unlike punts, which are dead balls if untouched, kickoffs are live balls unless they actually roll into the end zone. The ball didn't roll into the end zone. It hit the ground and died right at the 1 yard line, where Mount Pleasant recovered what amounted to be a 59-yard onside kick. No time ran off the clock. They had time for one play, scored on it, took a 2-touchdown lead, and beat us 14-6. So we took another tough loss down in the middle of the cotton field. Fortunately, we didn't lose all of the close ones, although we tried. We played a game at Wallace High School, which, like the aforementioned McCall and Mount Pleasant high schools, no longer exists, falling prey to consolidation, as many rural schools have done over the years. While those school districts may have saved money, it would be hard to see the consolidated schools created from them as being real success stories. This game was going to go a long way in determining which team was going to get into the playoffs, so we badly needed a win. Late in the game, we were in ideal position to kick a go-ahead field goal with only one concern. There was an extreme lean to the goalpost. While that was a major source of concern, it wasn't the worst field goal issue we encountered in those years. Down the road a few miles was Clio High School, which also fell to consolidation. During our week of preparation for Clio, we didn't practice extra points field goals all week. As we got near the end of our Thursday practice, I asked the head coach about it. He said, "You can't kick it, Clio. You'll see when we get there." He was right. I did see when I got there. Their football field was squeezed into the only available space that they had. On one end, right outside the back of the end zone, was part of the school building. Anything you kicked on that end was going on top of the school. On the other end, right behind the end zone, was a chain link fence, which kept players from running out into a busy highway. It was explained to me as I stood there looking out at the highway. If you managed to kick the ball on that end and avoided the ball being run over in the highway, it would roll into the yard across the street where a big dog lived, and where the owner so despised having a lighted football field across from his house, he wouldn't give the footballs back if they went in his yard. Folks, you can't make this stuff up. Anyhow, we strayed away from Wallace and the crooked goalposts, so let's return. Our kicker, Kip McCoy, kicked the field goal through the leaning goalpost to put us ahead as we moved into the last couple of minutes of the game. Our defense held Wallace, and they punted, leaving us in a position to just run the clock out. But as usual, things were not as easy as they seemed. On Wallace's third down plays, one of our defensive backs got banged up and had to come out. And of course, he was our punt returner. So the head coach sent in another talented young player to return the punt. As soon as I saw him going on the field, I began yelling, "No, no, no, no. Omar can't catch a punt." The head coach said, "He'll be fine. He's a good running back." I was a running backs coach. I worked with Omar every day. I knew all the strengths and weaknesses of all the running backs. Omar's weakness was he couldn't catch. I knew that, Obviously, the head coach didn't. Now, years later, when I became the head coach, I told Omar, "You're going to get good or you're going to get tired." What I meant was he was going to really work at improving on things like catching balls and not fumbling, or he wasn't going to play, and he was going to run a lot. I knew how good he could be. So Omar was the kind of guy who took the good route over the tired one. He worked really hard to improve on the things that he didn't do well. And he too became an all state running back by the time he was a senior. At any rate, there he was out on the field, back to return a punt, with me knowing there's no way Omar's going to catch a punt. They punted it straight to him. He didn't even have to move more than a foot or so. Put up his hand, waved for the fair catch. The ball came down and hit him squarely on top of the helmet and bounced straight up in the air several feet. I'm not bothered to tell you what my comments were as I saw that happening out on the field, but you can imagine. Fortunately for us, we had a very aggressive player out there who was supposed to be blocking for Omar, and he saw what was happening and jumped up and snatched the ball out of the air at its highest point. As poor Omar was looking around to try to find where the ball was. We were able to hold on and win that game as a result of that aggressive play. Now, as bad as those losses were, the one I'll remember the most was late one season at home against Mount Pleasant. This one also came down to kicking, as it turned out. We seem to always have close games with the Mount Pleasant Rattlers. Now, by the way, you haven't experienced a real small school basketball game unless you've been in the small Mount Pleasant gym, packed to the rafters, standing room only, so hot in the middle of winter that everyone in the place was breaking out in sweat. I can still remember the crowd in that place rolling as the cheerleaders chanted, "Ooh-wee, it's hot in here. There must be a rattler in the atmosphere." This is a heavy accent on the "at" in the atmosphere. Anyhow, this time we had the football game well in hand. We had a 6-point lead. We were driving late in the game for yet another score. All we had to do basically was run out the clock. As often was the case, our defense turned in a solid effort and the Rattlers had struggled to score. I'm close to the goal line. Our drive stalled when we were thrown for a loss on second down. We wanted to keep the clock running, so we didn't want to throw on second and long. We were well within field goal range, so the head coach decided we'd set up a field goal that would put the game away. I mean, after all, if Kip could kick a game winner through a crooked goalpost, he could make one through a perfectly upright one, even if it was near the right field line of the baseball field. That's right. I've kind of told you about other people's fields, but not ours. You see, our field was a combination football baseball field, so the goalpost was in right field. We'd actually take the goalpost down after football season, so the right fielder didn't get knocked out running into it. The entire football field fit in the outfield. Mickey Mantle could not have hit a ball out of center field. Anyway, back to the story. I do tend to ramble with these things. Coach decided to set up field goal. He called for a quarterback sneak on third down to get the ball in the middle of the field and make the field goal easier. So Kip, the quarterback, same Kip, that's the field goal kicker, was also the quarterback. Anyhow, he takes the snap, he runs the sneak, gets tackled in the dead center of the field. Perfect. Well, perfect, except that he didn't get up immediately from the bottom of the inevitable pile that you get on quarterback sneaks. You know, like one of the modern tush pushes. The referees called the trainer out to check up on him. And after taking a few moments, Kip was up and ready to go. But the referees sent him to the sideline. You see, if they had to call someone out to check on a player for injury, the player, by rule, has to sit out the next play. Kip's not going to be able to kick that field goal that we had worked to set up. The head coach calls a timeout, calls the field goal team over to him. From my perch on top of the press box, I'm asking the head coach who's going to kick, since Kip is out and we don't have a backup kicker. He says, we're good. I called a timeout so he can go back in and kick. And I informed him that's not how it works. He can't go back in for one play, regardless of taking a timeout. Coach sends them on the field anyhow, Kip among them. The referees inform him Kip can't be on the field, so he calls another timeout. At this point, you just got to send in the other quarterback, who has split time with Kip all season, and run some type of play, and then let the defense go out, hold them, and win the game. But Coach decided that's not what he's going to do. He said, no, we'll just kick the field goal. And I said, who the hell's going to kick it? But he had a plan. We'll let Gary do it. Gary can kick it. To which I replied, do what? And again he said, we'll just let Gary kick it. He makes them in his backyard. I've seen him do it. Now, of course, losing my mind, I strongly pointed out there's no way in hell that's going to work. We never practiced having Gary kick. All year. Not once. Never. No one but Kip had kicked in games or in practice. Now, I assumed everyone knows you can't do something you have not practiced with the game on the line, particularly on a field goal. By now, all the other coaches were beginning to join in, all agreeing with me. But the head coach, he'd had enough. He put his foot down, and he sent them out there to kick with Gary, who made them in his backyard. You see, Gary's dad had put up a goalpost in the backyard, and Gary went out and kicked through that homemade goalpost. But he didn't practice with a snapper or our holder or a rush or anything close to what it's like kicking in a live situation. You can kind of see what's coming, maybe. Now understand, it doesn't matter how good or bad a kicker Gary may have been. Kicking field goals is an operation. It requires timing in order to be successful. To get that timing, you have to practice the entire operation with the people who will be executing it. So he sends Gary in to kick. Gary, of course, takes too long getting the kick off. The kick is blocked. A Mount Pleasant defender picks up the blocked kick, runs all the way down the field to score what turns out to be the winning touchdown. I'm not sure whether the Mount Pleasant defender practiced blocking kicks in his backyard. In our next few episodes, I'll talk about a practical joke-loving principal, the best coach I ever worked for, and how he diffused a tense situation. Coaches avoiding not getting fired, prayer and football, and I'll give some advice along the way. I hope you'll join me.